What's going on, my friends? What's going on, motherfuckers? Oh boy, do I have some things to say today. So last night I was doing a bit of reading and I forgot that I was reading this book, so I picked it back up again. It's called A Druid and Psychologist's Clothing. It's about E. Graham Howe's Secret Druidic Doctrine. And it's this guy, what's his name? Ian Edwards. He's kind of equating a lot of the psychological teachings, books that this man wrote, Mr. Howe, way back in the 20s and 40s and all that kind of echo a druidical understanding of the mind and of people and stuff, right? That's the picture of the man there. And it's terribly clever because on this side, they're like, that's what he would look like if he was a druid. I think that's a better look, man. So, just kind of diving into that. And I got into a section that was talking about superiority and inferiority complexes, and we're talking Freudian things, and he's even equating a little bit of, what's that fucker's name? Jung and Howe. Howe is kind of this guy that went under the radar. Everyone knows about Freud way before him. Everyone knows about Jung, who was a bit after him, but no one remembers this Howe guy. And so I was just kind of reading about this, and he got into a section that got me thinking about relationships and understanding relationships. And he said something, Mr. Howe did, that was very interesting and something that I kind of want to explore stream of consciousness style. So let's do that. Now, simply put, I'm not going to use his words. I'm not going to like, well, then this is because I don't remember. I'm not a scholar, okay? But here's what I understand if I were to put my language into it, which is very simple language, as you should know by the previous video. When it comes to relationships, there are, let's keep it really, really simple. We'll have two people, right? You and your spouse, or your mother, or your father, or your friend. Doesn't matter, it's anybody. Those are two separate, seemingly separate objects, and yet they have a relationship together with each other. There's something that's needed there, whether it's some mutual benefit, whether it's because it's, you know, platonic, or whether it's your mother and father, you know, you gotta have some sort of relationship. It doesn't mean there's a good or bad into it. It's just the idea that you have a relationship with everybody, and every relationship is slightly different than the other. We have a system for each relationship, the way we need to react, the way we need to be, our dynamic in that relationship. But suffice to say, there's something between those two people that defines what the individuals put inside of it. And the man here, Mr. Howe, talked about the space between you and me. So I have this in the relationship and you have something in that. What about the space between us? What's transferred back and forth? We can talk about inadequacies, we could talk about trust, we could talk about all these litany of things that we pass back and forth as friends or lovers or acquaintances or, you know, anyone. We have something that we're giving and taking. And inside of that space between us is where we need to, in some sense, identify. As in, how do I identify the love that you give me? You being my metaphorical GF. So how do I define that? You ever notice people in relationships say like, oh man, he's a user, or she's a user. You know, or they say, this person, you know, they're gaslighting me. Or they say, gosh, so many fucking different things. Where they think their partner is kind of doing something that's hurting them on purpose. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, they don't care about my feelings. They're making me do these things. They don't care about my feelings, blah, blah, blah. We always do that, don't we? Because we're only receiving the data coming in. But as we're receiving the data in the space between, we're inferring it with our own selves. I'm going to get to the board. I'll show you kind of how I might think this stuff works. It's suffice to say, you as a separate person are giving me information. You're saying things to me. You're doing things for me. You're defining your life for me. We communicate. We have an understanding. And if we're in the middle of some sort of negative element, seemingly, at least this is the part we can go back to how, according to how, there is this superior and inferior tendencies inside of a relationship. But they're only reactionary to each other. So to say, I am feeling superior in this relationship because I'm slightly older than you, and I kind of mentor your feelings and I'm guiding you in some sense. And you're the inferior one because, you know, daddy issues, right? We could put that really simply. But though that's very arbitrary, that's kind of stupid. I meant it as a joke. But to be serious, you have an inferiority complex based upon a superiority that you need inside of self. So in this hypothetical relationship, I'm dating someone younger than me, probably 10 plus years to make it really something. There's going to be a superior and inferior, but there's data in between. When I'm trying to pass the data to my spouse that, hey, I'm trying to help you. I see the road you're on. I see the mistakes you've made. I'm just here to fucking help you in that. They might infer that data as, oh, you're controlling me. You're manipulating me. Comes back to me, I say, no, I don't want you going out with those people because they're not good for you. You're better than them, and you don't deserve the things that are coming to you. And I'm trying to tell you that you are what you do. So the things that happen to you are you. If you're constantly getting in trouble, that's your own fault. You're the one seeking the trouble out. That, we turn to the other person, they say, oh, look at more manipulation. Now he's gaslighting me. Now he's telling me how I feel to manipulate and control me. In which none of that's happening. So that's what I'm trying to say is what's going on between the people, right? That's why there's always psychologists and therapists, because they're the one that's like, okay, they receive that data in there. Well, then what do you think about it? Well, what do you think? And then they're the ones deciphering what's happening between the two different people. Let's go to the board. Now, as you can see, we drew it up. We have you, we have me. We have the space between. I kind of believe there's this understanding that we have all throughout my book, and that is the manifestation and unmanifestation. I know that that comes in the idea of reality in of itself, because that's what this creates, is a reality. When manifestation meets unmanifestation. But I really think that, let's say this is on and this is manifest. I really think they're multidimensional. I really think it's more than this is just merely unmanifested. And I also don't want to make it simple saying like this is you and this is me. Like, I don't think so, man. I think it's much, much deeper than that. But I do want to keep that understanding in our minds. If you've watched all the other previous videos, you should know what I'm talking about with the unmanifested and the manifested. Now, here's the space between. Here are some questions. So what's given? What are you giving? What is she giving or he? What is he taking? And what is this person taking? The information that lies between each other. And what is transferred? Whoops. We're passing information back and forth. This right here, in some sense, now this might be really fucking stupid, okay? But let me just preface by saying I am not in any way a psychologist or a therapist, all right? Please understand that. Don't quote me on this shit. I'm just thinking of my own life. And here, my belief system would be this is some sort of thought form. This is a thought form right here. This is something that we believe in. We think our relationship has rigid lines. We think that we have rules in a relationship. I don't sleep with other women in my relationship because we've established that as a rule. Whether you want to believe it's like, what's that fucking word? Like morally correct, you know, whether we have it's culturally because our religion tells us to. In reality, we chose that. You don't even have to say it out loud, but it's understood. You should not mess around behind your wife's back. You know? It should be common sense. But to some cultures and to some people, it is not. But we can get into that at some point. But more rules, more things that we disagree to and say like, yep, that's what that is. You gotta take yourself out of being a human to really appreciate this shit, man. It's fucking trippy. I don't know how to explain to you the way to do it, but to put it very simply, look at your life objectively and say like, holy fuck, this is really crazy. I'm in a room right now. I am communicating to you with my fucking voice. You understand what I'm saying. And we're talking about something that we all express and feel. Love and relationship, you know, some sort of, and again, this could be every relationship, but I really want to focus on spousal shit. It's trippy to think about that you can find someone else that you can live your life with. You can live with this person. You procreate with that person. You fucking go to the shopping stores together. You do all these things with another human being. By all rights is separate from you. And you start to understand each other, know how to read each other. And that to me says there's a thought form here. You've applied inside of it, both of you, your own aspect of self. That's me, that's me. Well, that's me. Well, then he's like, well, that's me. And that's me. And that's me. Here's my humor. Here's her humor. They found a way to connect to each other and relate to each other. Here's my anger, what I get mad about, my insecurities. Well, here's hers. You see what I mean? Like, we add to this thought form until it becomes this thing. You are your relationship. When you go somewhere, it's you and your girlfriend, you and your boyfriend, you and your husband, right? You are this fucking thing, and you keep adding to it. And in my sense of understanding what Howe is saying here, that's the space between. That's what they're describing. This is totally you. This is everything that's you. Here's all of your different little feelings that you have. And they all branch from, let me draw it better actually. So as I understand it, you have love and you have fear. And every single emotion branches from it. So you have all these little, you have all these little emotions, and they just kind of branch from each other like a fucking tree of life. There's so many different individual emotions a human being can feel. And it comes from a source of love and fear. We could say love is God and fear is the devil. You could use whatever analogies you really want to use, but at the end of the day, that is self. This is true self right here. I don't want to use red because it's the chisel kind. I don't want to use chisel. So that's a chisel as well. I want to use the bullet. So you have self inside of you, and that is something that you need to seek to understand. But when we're passing information, we can add some negativity to this middle section here, I think, okay? And that negativity can start filling it up. And this is what ruins relationships. Because now you cheated on her. That's in there now. Fuck, you made a mistake. That's in the relationship. That's always going to be when she seeks something, she's going to bump into that again. Like, oh yeah, he cheated on me, didn't he? Resentment can build. Each person has to come to terms with whatever the thing is that happened in self. Here's what I mean by that. This is me. I cheated. I did something very bad inside of this space here. That went inside of a relationship, and now there's that. There's that memory, that stain, that thing inside of our little relationship that we're both going to come back to whenever I do something remotely similar or something remotely, you know what I mean? Like, oh, it reminds me. We'll go to her. Why did I do that? So to fix this problem here is to not do it again. It will always be there. It is a scar. But how do we fix that scar? Well, let's go into self, down the vortex of confusion, until we get to that dark expanse. Perpetual darkness inside of self. Make sure you take along with you, which this is, I call this the vortex of confusion. I call this the descending staircase into self. This is thoughts, and this right here is along the way all the things you've done. Like, okay, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about this. You get down, and that's what I call the whys. These are the whys. Why did I do this? Why did I do that? I cheated on my lady. Why? Let's go down the vortex of confusion, because you can go wrong ways at times. You know what I mean? You can be like, well, I think I did it because my father when I was young, blah. You can totally go the wrong ways with it. But when you do it right and you get to the self, It's a perpetually dark place. You must take illumination with you to light up the dark and to search out inside of dark the truth, the real reason why you lust after women. Once you find that corner, you get to know it and you can fix it. And you can say, I will not do that again. I will not treat them this way because I've learned that that's using them. That's manipulation. That's this, that's that. I don't want to do that again. I fixed and put a little light in that spot of myself. Keep that always inside of you because you can forget. You might lose that light. That light might go out. You might go back to your old ways again. Uh-oh, we're going back down and we're making mistakes again. Going to this person, she has to make sure that if she truly believes you, trust is like, it's like, how do you go past it? You got to go to trust now. Man, how do you trust someone that fucked you over? Like, you can ignorantly do it and constantly get into messes. This one, it's so fucking tricky. How do you trust this fucking asshole here? That's up to you to decide. But that's self. That's understanding of self. You must do the same thing. And you must find the reason of trust. And you have to communicate. So you need to make sure that the shit you're learning about yourself, you're putting back into this. You need to. You have to add to this thing. This can get muddied. And this is where the analogy of your relationship is like a flower. More like it's a garden. You can't just let it go. Look how messy it already fucking is, man. We're giving and taking from this thing. We're adding and we're subtracting. That's a lot going on. We have to prune this shit. We have to start taking care of this and making sure it's a lot cleaner. Something that we can both go into and feel better about. There we go. We have some more room here. Let's add our stuff to it. Let's get married. Let's have children. Let's buy a house. We're doing all these things, and remember, each individual little circle represents the things that you're doing inside the relationship, but they come from outside of the relationship. You're adding and taking from it. Notice there's still fragments of some color here. Those are the stains of memory. Those are the things that you can be like, yeah, I remember. He fucking cheated on me, though. Now he's going on that business trip. Is he going to do it again? We have children now. This is not as small of a thing as it used to be. This is how I understand relationships. So, as I was saying here, we think of terms as they were describing in this like early, 20th century shit, the superior and the inferior. There's pluses and negatives to this. Plus to a superior is truly inside of it. The negative aspect of superiority complex is feeling inferior. The positive is it's some sort of mentorship to be superior. You can pass on knowledge. When it comes to the inferior, what's the negative of it? Well, that's self-esteem. That's like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. What's the positive inferior? Empathy. You're allowing others to enter self. It's about seeking a balance. Because one's born from the other. So you have to find a balance in your relationship. I don't know necessarily that there are fundamental keys. So when it comes to this understanding, like, okay, what are the fundamental keys to making sure we're in balance? Like, is that establishing a superior-inferior understanding? Is that establishing some sort of basic understanding between us both so that we both understand that this is the space between us? That's kind of up in the air for me in describing this. Let's go back to the fucking thing. So that's just kind of something I've been pondering. I'm just like, man, relationships, it's so much dynamics going on. There's so many individual things that are happening to take and subtract from this concept. And I really think at the end of the day, isn't that what relationships are? Is like some sort of concept we get together, we agree upon, and then we see it through. You can fall out of them too. Think of like friendships along the way. Think of falling out of love with your spouse. Like sometimes you can. Now, there are too many factors for me to sit here and say the reason why you fell out of love or the reason why you don't have that friend anymore. It's so vast. And the beauty of understanding what that is, it's you. That's self. Why did you stop hanging out with that fucking friend? Well, everyone's different. Some people say, well, they were getting in a lot of trouble and I didn't want to anymore. I couldn't save them and I accepted it. Some people merely say, we just drifted apart over the years. everyone's got their own kind of explanation for that, and I can't sit here and keep giving a bunch of made up scenarios, and maybe you will hopefully find the right one. I encourage you to think about your relationships in the space between. You can do it in the comment section if you really feel like it. It's up to you, but it's a private endeavor. So you can keep it to yourself. But I don't think you should feel like you need to hide it. Don't ever feel you need to. I just wouldn't want anyone to do something that they put on the internet that could cause a negative effect, you know. But then again, sometimes negative effects are good for you, so we'll see. But I just wanted to just a preliminary. No, I just want to take a little step inside of this idea, and it was born from just merely one chapter of this book. It's a very good book. It's the reason I really like it is because it's helping me tread back into trying to eliminate our modern culture in our thought processes. Trying to eliminate either the religious element or the cultural. I want to get to the source of understanding of self. And in some sense, it's 20th century psychology that's outdated. But I think that you have to start in the past to go to the future. And I really am trying to establish a sense of understanding. Psychology and therapeutic things, working with the mind, is something that I'm naturally akin to. I was foolish and I never went to school for it. But then again, I was broke, so how the fuck could I have? I never really got the opportunity for someone to help me realize this about myself till I hit my fucking 30s. So at this point, I'm just like, well, I don't know if I can be a psychologist. I mean, I'd really have to go 10 more years, and then I'd be in my late 40s by the time I get my degree, and then by that point, like, you know, how am I working my fucking stupid grocery job? And I don't know. I haven't found a way to get there yet. I'm not saying I can't, but I myself am just like, I don't know what to do with myself, right? Then there's this rebellious side of me that says, why do you need a degree to help? I understand the idea of collective thought that we can draw from the pool of, you know, which is the scholarly approach. Like, this is the pool of all of psychology that we understand. Here's what's accepted now, and here's what's not. And we have all this shit, and I'm merely just drawing from it because they said it all, and I just have to memorize what they say, and I shoot it at you. That's the rebellious side of me that's like, no, fuck that. Like, we need to help humans with humans, not idea concepts. Not saying that's right, but that's just my natural mode, you know. But it's rather interesting when I think about it, and I just really, I really find this stuff fascinating. I always actually love when people come to me and talk about their lives, and when they talk about the things that happen in their lives, the feelings that they have, the people that they know, and how that affects them. And I enjoy it because in some sense, I get to do this. I get to really dwell on it, and I really get to find ways that maybe I could help these people. But I just teeter on that idea that I was saying where people think, well, you're being superior in this relationship and you're just looking down on me and trying to help me with the way you think, right? Someone could negatively think that, so I battle that. Like, how do you combat that? I mean, I never really met too many people that feel that way about me anymore. I did in my 20s, but I was just ignorant the way I was approaching it. I just thought if I gave you the fucking stuff and you took it, you'd be fine. I didn't, you know what I mean? I didn't think intelligently about it. That I need to help you find this. I think that's good enough for this video. I think we should send this, and that should be good enough. And then we can get on with our day. But hopefully in the next one we can explore something else interesting, and maybe we can elaborate a little bit more on this if people give a fuck, but I'm assuming it'll get 10 views with, you know, a minute and a half of viewership. Because people tune shit out when it's too hard. So, we shall see, my friends, what happens in the next one.